Okay, well, it's 1 minute past. So, firstly, a warm welcome to everyone that's joined this webinar and giving up your time on a Monday afternoon. So, today we will be talking about maximizing engagement in a hybrid learning world. But this time we're looking at best practice in the classroom and at home. So, David, who I'll introduce in a minute, will be looking at modelling a live lesson with the focus of maximising student engagement, looking at a range of tools and applications that can be used to ensure students remain on task, which can be a challenge in itself, even when being taught from home, by making sure that lessons are interactive, but also showing how to provide some real-time feedback to the classroom teacher. I would encourage everyone, as with previous webinars, if you've already attended, to please submit any questions you might have during the webinar in the chat box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screens. They won't be answered until the end at the Q&A, but please do add them as and when you think of anything that you would like to ask. So I'll be introducing David. So David Fitzpatrick is going to be running this session. David is our senior educational consultant. And is very well suited for this session because he's come to RM off the back of a successful career as a science and maths teacher. And he's also an experienced Google Cloud Solutions architect. So should feel right at home in the Google environment here. Without further ado, then over to you, David.
Okay, thanks ever so much, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. So the idea of this afternoon's session is to look at how we can maximise student engagement, as Sarah just said to us. Now, when we're delivering lessons in class, when we're delivering a traditional lesson, we know that students are in class, we know they're listening. But obviously, at the moment, you are all away, you're all at your own computers. I have no idea if you're listening to me, if you're on your phones, if you're doing something else. So how can I deliver a lesson and to make sure that you are listening and engaged? So that's what we're going to look at today, and I'm going to try to model a live lesson. So recently there was some research done on what is good teaching when you're delivering distance learning or learning when your students aren't in your classroom. And some of the key findings for that was that teaching quality is more important than how the lessons are being delivered, than what tool, than what technology you're using. Obviously, your students need access to the technology. Peer interactions can provide more motivation and improve learning outcomes. Helping students work independently, helping them reflect on what they're doing can be really helpful. And obviously, you have to use different approaches to teach different students of different abilities and different age groups. And that research was from the Education Endowment Foundation. When looking at challenges of delivering distance learning, this piece of research showed the things that teachers were pulling out as the most challenging things. Lack of training, too complicated to use the technology, not enough devices, too much time to set up. And what we're going to look at today is I'm just going to pick out 3 of those, which is things being too complicated, the technology that students are using actually proves to be a distraction, and how to integrate the technology together. And also, teachers have said, over half of teachers said that they definitely need a better understanding of technology to deliver this new world. So in the session today, I'm going to focus on 3 pillars, which is how to maximize student engagement, how to maximize collaboration between you and the students and between the students themselves, and how to provide real-time feedback for you as the teacher to make sure your students are engaged in the learning. So I'd like you just to look quickly at this paragraph and just read this for just a minute for me. Okay, so this came from a book written by Emma Pass called The Hybrid Teacher Survival Guide. This presentation will come out to you after this session, and I really recommend that you look at this guide because it has some real pearls of wisdom for how you deliver distance learning. Also, when you're delivering your online learning, you might want to set up some protocols with your students. So on the chat, they, for example, can say when they've joined your lesson, so it's easy to register them at the end. If they need to leave for a toilet break or for a family issue, they have to say hall pass or something similar. So you know they're away, and tell them to say I'm back when they're back, so you know you can engage with them and ask them questions again. You might want them to use the chat to say things like clap to when a student has given a good answer. And you might have some shortcuts, for example, Q for question, C for comment, and I for idea. So when you're delivering your online learning and you're using your video conferencing, very much recommend you set up your chat in that way. But what I'm going to spend the main element of this lesson doing is hopefully to try and demonstrate some real teaching to you and model a real lesson. So here I've got a standard Google slideshow. So in a traditional lesson, I might run through this slideshow and hope that you're listening to me. And at the end of that, I might ask you to watch a video and then do some work for me. But the point is, when I'm delivering this to you, I have no awareness of whether you're listening to me, whether you're engaged with the learning. So what we're going to do today is we're going to show you some tools that really can help with this. And the first tool I want to show you is in Google Classroom. So I'm just going to go here to my classroom, which I'm assuming you're all using. And one of the first things that I would encourage you to use is the questions. So if I in my Google Classroom go to classwork, one of the options I have is to create a question. And the reason you might want to ask a question is a starter activity. So if students are having technical issues like I did just a few minutes ago, or they're a bit late from their last lesson, you don't want other students to be sitting waiting for that for your lesson to start. So questions are a really nice starter activity to get your students quickly engaged as soon as they join your lesson. And also, because you can ask students to do this, it gives you a little bit of downtime, and that's really important because delivering online teaching all day, every day can be really intensive. So giving students something to do where you can sit back for just a few minutes will make your day a little bit less intensive. Now, of course, I could click on question now and type my question in, but obviously that's quite dull for you to watch me typing. So what I've actually done, and this is something I really encourage you all to do, is I've set up another classroom called Question Bank. And that classroom is just for my department, just for my teachers. There are no students in that. And that contains the questions that we typically ask our students. So rather than every lesson having to type those questions out in real time, I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to go to my classwork. I'm going to go to create, and I'm going to use this option to reuse post. It then takes me to all of the classes that I've got set up, including this one called Question Bank. And there's my starter activity, which I'm going to reuse. If you now look on the right-hand panel, it's got a couple of options here. Students can reply to each other. So again, going back to what I said, one of the key ways to facilitate learning is for collaboration. So by allowing the students to reply to each other, it means they can look at each other's answers, collaborate, suggest ways to make it better. And again, the students then are working together collaboratively. And the other option I've got here is that students can edit their answer, which means that they can create their answer, look and comment on their peers, and then perhaps go back to their answer and create a model answer. So we're doing a lesson on solids, liquids and gases today. And last lesson, we were talking about elements, molecules and compounds. So my starter activity is to think back to what we did last time. So I'm going to ask that question. So now I've got some of my colleagues from RM now that have got that question. And I'm just going to go here to a different tab now. So this is the student, and the students now have all got that question, and the students can simply say here that elements are made from the same type of atom. And I can turn that in, and then you can see here I've got the option to edit my answer and to see my classmates' answers. So with a bit of luck, some of my colleagues from RM are also in this room. They are also answering the questions, And I can now, as a student, go back and reply and suggest how they could improve or enhance their answer. So that's why I really recommend that you use the questioning. The next thing I want to look at is this idea of presenting to my students. So I'm presenting a PowerPoint, which is what I just showed you with states of matter. But what I want to do is I want to present this to my students, but I want to know they're actively engaged in the learning. So, and this I think is the key thing that I'm going to teach you today. So this is really the key part of my presentation that I'd like you to take away with you. If you ask your Google administrator to add an add-on called Nearpod, what you can do is you can simply take your existing presentations, your Google slideshows, nothing new has to be created, and you simply go to add-ons, Nearpod, and open Nearpod. This all works seamlessly with Google with your same Google account, and it will connect automatically to your Google Drive. And what Nearpod enables you to do is to simply add some interactive elements wherever you want to in your slide. So I could say between slide 3 and 4, I want to have a fill in the blanks question. So it's no more difficult than going to slide 3, and then from the Nearpod add-on, click on to fill in the blanks. You simply type your text here, or you can copy and paste. Sorry. Click on to next. And what I can do now is I can simply choose the words that I want to drag and drop and click on to done. And you can see here into my presentation that interactive slide has appeared. So now if I go to Nearpod itself and go to one I've made earlier, this is that exactly the same presentation with a series of interactive slides added to it. And you can see here there's slides like draw it, like fill in the blanks, memory test, open-ended questions, polls, quizzes. And these are the sorts of slides you can enter into your existing slideshow. And as I said, here is one that I've made earlier. And all I do when I'm delivering my lesson to my students is just rather than going through my conventional slideshow, I simply click here onto live participation. And you can see now it says to your students, go to join.nearpod.com and type in that code. So could I ask everybody, please, because I'm trying to model a real lesson, everybody that's participating in this call, could you open up a new tab in your browser? Not obviously the tab you're in, because you'll lose me, but if you can go and open a new tab for me and go to join.nearpod.com, and can you type in that code? And Sarah, could I ask you please to put that into the chat so if people miss my slide, they can come in over the next minute or two. So could you please put that into the chat of the Click Meet for us? So just a reminder, you go to a new tab called join.nearpod.com and type in that code. Hopefully those details are in the chat for you. And now when I click here, I can start to see people coming into my lesson. So at the moment, I've only got 3 people. I'd like a few more than that if possible. Now I've got 6. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll give you just a couple more minutes. You simply go to join.nearpod.com and you type in AY6HK. How many have I got now? Loads of you. I think that will be good. So you've now come into my Nearpod lesson, and now I can simply navigate that lesson by scrolling through these blue arrows on the right-hand side. So the first slide I come to is like an ideas board or a mood board. And you can see here, the first thing it's asking me is, do I want to moderate this? Now, obviously, if I'm teaching a less mature class or a less well-behaved class, I might absolutely want to have a moderation so nothing can go on my board. But I don't mind today because so I'm going to say no. So this could be, what did we learn last lesson? Or it could be to do with some creative writings or some ideas, or what were the main factors that affect the pathway of the Second World War. So what I'd like everybody to do, please, as somebody already has, is simply to, in the bottom box of your screen, type some words and click onto post for me. And you will see all of those posts come in real time onto our ideas board. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Annabelle. Any more? Thank you, Andrew. So you can see here, again, going back to this idea of collaboration and going back to real-time feedback, this is a hugely powerful tool, which took me literally seconds to set up. And it's, instead of just going through my normal PowerPoint, I'm just using this tool instead. And I can see you're doing a fantastic job there. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to move on if I can. RM, amazing. Thank you, Simon. Okay, so if I now go to my next slide, this is a drawing slide. So what happened now is your computer screen has just turned into a little drawing palette. If you look at my screen now, I can see what you're doing. And what I'd like everybody to do now is, into the boxes, can you tell me what you think the particles look like in a solid, a liquid, and a gas? And if you look on the screen, I can see you doing that in real time. So I can see that you're contributing, that I can see that you're working. And I'd like you please to all have a go at that just for a couple of minutes. And when you're done, can you click on to submitted for me? And let's imagine, whose do I like? Annabelle, yours is looking good. A bit quick, please. Okay, and I'm going to stop you there. Thank you. Student 7, can you please submit your work? And I'm going to go for Damon. So if I click here onto Damon and then click onto share, now that has appeared on the screen for all of you. So now you can see what Simon's done, and we could talk about that, or I could talk about that. So, yep, brilliant. I can see here the particles are close together in a regular pattern, and I can see the gas there spread out in a very random pattern, and I can unshare that as I wish. Thank you, everybody. Brilliant job. If I go to my next slide, this is just a answer question, so you can type your answers. I'm not going to worry about that just for time today, but I can carry on going through my presentation with the different types of question. This is the fill in the blank. And this one finally, which I will ask you to do, is a poll. So this is another type of question where you could ask an opinion question. And the question I've got for you here is, do you think Nearpod could maximise student engagement by students, in this case you, are actively participating in a live lesson? So I'm going to click on to start activity. And again, in just 30 seconds, could everybody submit an answer for me? Fantastic. I was just worried for a minute that wasn't working. So apart from student 7, everybody there has said that it's a really good tool. If I click on to share now, again, you now see those results from the class. So this, I hope you can see, is a phenomenally powerful tool, because it takes what can be a very passive, very one-way experience, which is you watching a PowerPoint, a slideshow, to something that is completely interactive. And if I now end that show, another phenomenally powerful feature now is if I go to reports and I click on that Nearpod and I click onto this presentation here, in perpetuity now, I can see all of your responses for each of the different answers. I can go to each of the different types of questions and I can see exactly what you did. So again, this is what I was saying before, hugely collaborative, real-time feedback to the teacher, and just really engaging activity for you to participate in. So the next thing I might want you to do is I might want you to watch a video, because obviously the YouTube has got a huge, for example, huge wealth of resources. But again, as a teacher, how do I know that you are watching my video? Well, for this, I would recommend you use Edpuzzle. And what Edpuzzle allows you to do is take existing video content, either your own or anything that exists on, for example, Khan Academy or YouTube, and it allows you to punctuate that video with questions, and you can force your students to watch it. You can stop them from skipping, and you can force them to answer the questions. So when you're giving them this 5-10 minute video to watch, again, perhaps giving you some downtime in your day, in your lesson, you know that they're engaged because they're having to watch the video and they're having to answer the questions. Again, Edpuzzle just works seamlessly with your Google account. And what is really, really impressive about it is if I now go to my classes and click onto add and import classes, it looks directly into Google Classroom, and you can then tick and import those classes directly in, which is really powerful. So you're not having to have parallel classes in different products. Again, going back to what we talked about at the start, to remove complexity, all those classes come in because you've already got them. So once you've imported your classes, it's no more difficult than, for example, going to YouTube, typing in a video that you want to look at. Let's imagine I wanted that video there. I then simply click on the bottom right to edit. The cut just enables me to lengthen or shorten the clip. But most importantly, if I go to questions, you simply move the video to the right point, and then you get the system to ask a question. But as the video goes along, when it reaches that point in the video, it will stop. It will force the students to answer the question before it can carry on. So if I now go back to Edpuzzle now and go to my content and to one I made earlier, this is again connected with solids, liquids and gases and the states of matter. And you could see here, and obviously I'm not going to play this for you because it would be difficult for you to watch in this scenario. But as I reach these different points, it asks me these questions. Why does fire differ from gas? Does not last forever. Submit. And then I continue the video and I can go to my other questions as the video plays. And just like before, again, focusing on this idea of real-time feedback, when I go to my gradebook, for all the students in your class, for each video, it will tell you how they scored on the questions and also how long they watched the video for. So you know your students are watching it, you know they're engaged, and because they've got the answers right, you know they've understood the content. So again, Edpuzzle is a phenomenally powerful tool to deliver video content to your students. What I'd like to do now is I'm just going to hop across to a different tool. And now I'm just skipping into Google Meet. So everything I've shown you so far obviously is free. Classroom is free. Nearpod is freemium, which means it is free, but you can pay money if you want additional functionality or additional space capacity. What I did want to talk about, because in the context of what I'm delivering today is really important, there are some new features in Google Meet. Some of them are free. So for example, the ability to raise your hand has just been introduced, and I'm sure many of you have already spotted that. But what's more significant now is if you have the enterprise version of Google, which is the paid for version, which schools don't have to pay for students, just for staff, and it costs around £40 a year per teaching staff, so nothing for students, but around £40 per year for teaching staff. It's now got, when I click onto this icon here, 3 new features, which are wonderful. The first of these is this idea of breakout rooms. So going back to the core pillars and the research that's been done, collaboration is key. But obviously, I can't ask everybody to switch their microphones on today and have 30 students talking because it is carnage. It's too much noise, too disruptive. So one of the new features is the ability to create a breakout room. So if I click onto here now, and I set up my breakout rooms, it will automatically set out some breakout rooms, which I could name if I wanted to. And it randomly puts people into that room, but I could just chop and change those people around. And now when I open those rooms up, you can see that I can now join any of those breakout rooms where I've got students working in small groups, collaborating together on some work or a project that I've given them. But if I want to, I can simply go back to the main room and as can the student. So I can join the sub rooms. So here I am joining room A and I can see what they're doing. And at any point in time, I can go back to the central room again by leaving. And another really nice feature about this is you can put a timer on it. So if I just close those rooms to show you this quickly, if I now edit these rooms, I can set up a timer. So I can say, right, what I'd like you to do is go to your breakout rooms for 5 or 10 minutes, talk about or discuss this issue or work together on this particular project, and then we'll all come back together as a whole class. Another new feature is the ability for a poll. So if I click onto a poll here and start a poll, it could be, you know, did you understand this work, question mark. I could type in some responses for my class, yes or no. I could click onto launch and show everybody the results. And then hopefully my colleagues now can start to answer that poll and give me again real-time feedback as to what's going on in my lesson. And the final new feature for enterprise customers is this idea of a Q&A. So if I turn on the Q&A, all of my colleagues, or all of my students now can ask a question, and I'd encourage them to do that if you don't mind, please. And now the students can ask me questions. And some really nice features is that other students can like those questions. So if they see a question appear, which hopefully will be imminent, thank you, and they like that question, they can click on the thumbs up. So you know that lots of students want to or like the same question, and you can even order them by the most popular question. So you know which question to address first as you're going through your class. So as I said, everything I'm showing you today is free, but I did want to show you that because it is very new functionality. It really, really brings Google Meet to another level, I think. And also what will happen is when this Meet is finished, I will get an email about 5 minutes later that will tell me everybody that attended the meeting, how long they attended for. It will tell me all the questions and the responses, all the polls and all the responses. So again, I get that feedback after my lesson. If I now go back to my classroom, another thing which I could really encourage you to do is going back to my class here. So we've gone through a presentation perhaps on Nearpod, perhaps students have watched a video and I've seen what they're doing. I've maybe done some live teaching in Google Meet. But something I might want the students now is to start doing some work. But because students are on their own and they're isolated, I don't necessarily want them to work by myself. I want them to work in small groups. So this is just a reminder that if I now go to create an assignment, and this is going to be group A, and I'm going to add from my Google Drive a presentation that I've got for them on solids, liquids and gases. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to say students can edit this file. Now obviously if I clicked on assign now, it means the whole class would be edit to that one file, and that might cause a lot of disruption, a lot of students overwriting each other. But it's a reminder that rather than going to all students, I can untick that and say I only want this to go to students, for these students here, and assign it to them. So now only those students have got that piece of work. So that's to group A. And the other thing that I wanted to show you, as well as it only going to that subset of students, something else you might not have seen is this check plagiarism button, which I'm going to click onto. If you've got the enterprise version of Google, that's unlimited. If you've got the free version, there's 5 of those per classroom that you can do, 5 assignments. But what that will now do is as those students do that work, and I'm very hope my colleagues are working on that as we talk, as well as that only going to that small subset of students, if they simply copy and paste onto the internet, I will be able to find that out, because now Google is looking at that against every single article on the internet, and also any other piece of work that's been done by their peers. So it works in two different ways. So if I now click onto this, with a slight piece of luck, my colleagues are working on this, which is excellent. I'm hoping that they are plagiarizing desperately from the internet, because I can look using the originality report to see whether or not they are copying and pasting from the internet or it's their own original work. So thanks guys for doing that for me. So the idea of this activity, as I said before, is that you are giving students the ability to work together collaboratively, but in small groups. You could obviously coordinate this with the breakout spaces in Google Meet. So the same group of students who are working on a piece of work are also talking to each other in a breakout space. I wasn't going to try and demonstrate that today because I thought that would be perhaps a little bit too ambitious, but that's something you could absolutely do. So that's the idea of using Google Classroom to get students working together on a particular assignment, but not working as a whole group, but breaking it down into small groups. And of course that could be differentiated. So your more able students could be working on a more difficult version of that template, and your less able students could be working on something that's obviously a little bit simpler. So the other thing that people are talking about, or talking to me about and asking for help about, is, well, in our classroom, we don't just show PowerPoints. We also want to use our interactive whiteboards, and that's very difficult to do if I'm working from home and the students are working from home. So another thing that you may not have spotted, and again, this is free, this is available to everybody, just may need to talk to your administrator to make sure it's switched on, is when you're in Google Meet, now seamlessly, you can open what is called a Jamboard. And if I click onto that now and start a new Jamboard, it will instantly look at everybody that's in your class, and it will give the right permissions. And now it creates a Jamboard file, which is Google's interactive whiteboard. So if I just go to my attachments now, it hasn't appeared, which is not good. Let me just try that again. Chris, there we go. I think it did it this time, thank you. So there now is Google Jamboard, which is a tool now for me to explain a concept or explain an idea, emulating the whiteboard I've got in my classroom. So I can go to my drawing tools, just like you would with an interactive whiteboard. I can add pictures, I can add shapes, and I can add text. So again, this is really simple. I'm not going to go through this with any great detail, but what I would say to you, which is very unusual for Google, is that the browser version I'm showing you now is the light version. But if you have your tablet, an iPad or an Android tablet, you can actually use Jamboard on the tablet, which gives you more power and more tools. So if I it's going to be difficult to show you this, but I'm now, no, I'm not going to worry about that for now, just because of time. But if you're on a tablet, when you are doing this presentation, it has all sorts of assistive tools for creating your presentations. So you can, for example, have text recognition, or you can do a drawing, and a hand drawing, and it will look and analyze it and insert a real drawing, a real image of what you're trying to draw. So it's really powerful, but that's only on the mobile version on an iPad rather than on the browser version. But I just wanted to show you that Jamboard is available for you as a real-time interactive surface that students can either view or collaborate on if that's what you want them to do. And the final thing I want to show you, which again, I'm guessing a lot of you would have heard of, is a product called Kahoot. So Kahoot is a quiz piece of software which allows all of your students to join in a really interactive, fun, engaging quiz. Now you can either create these from scratch, or there's a huge library of resources that are available to you that you can just search for and find one that you like. So I found one here called States of Matter. I know that my students have been in my classroom like you have for about 40 minutes now. You need a bit of waking up. You need something fun, a bit engaging. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to click on play and teach. And now for all of you, please, again, could you go to a different tab for me? And can you go to www.kahoot.it, so Kahoot it, and it will ask you for a pin. And could I ask you to type in that pin for me? So again, another really simple tool to maximize student engagement. So can you go please to www.kahoot.it? Can you type in the number that you see? I can see a couple of you have joined me. Hopefully, I've still, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Damon. I hope I haven't lost most of you by now. Fantastic. And again, hopefully everybody, you can see just how simple this is. So now, and right, just to be clear, guys, you need to be concentrating now. This is quick. So I've now delivered my lesson on solids, liquids and gases. I want to do something fun, engaging, and I want to gauge your understanding. So you have to look at my screen, answer on your screen. You'll get the idea in a minute if you've not seen this before. So you're being timed here. The quicker you are, the more points you get. Time up. And you can see here, the answer was all of these are true, of which 8 of you got it correct. If I click on to next, that's the scoreboard. Steph's gone straight into an early lead with 1,740 points. I can see you're being a bit quicker this time, which is excellent. Just to be clear, everyone, I'm making this quicker than a real environment because obviously I'm doing this for demonstration purposes, not in real life. I would slow this down, but 16 of you said solid, and we can see here that Steph still in an early, still kept a lead. Well done, Steph. Fantastic. 16 of you said liquid. Has Steph kept a lead? Closely followed by number 6. Come on, Steph. We should have said there was a prize for this, shouldn't we? Maybe there's an RM mug. 16, 17 answers. And we've got 10 as a gas. Oh, Steph. Storming it, Steph. Again, most of you got that correct. Oh, Emma moved into the lead. Very good for that. Water. Another lead here for Simon. Couple more. Worth noting, everyone, at the bottom it has got the address and the PIN code, so even if students are late, they can always get that information. Oh, Damon, a new leader as we come towards the end. Very good, melting everybody. Has Damon kept his lead? I have no idea who We Love Fitzy is, but I'll take it. What do we call it when liquid water is, what causes liquid to change into a gas? And we've got, oh, We Love Fitzy. Last question, I think. No, two more. Very good. I think that We Love Fitzy's got this. I think it's a shoo-in. Very good. In third place, we have number 3, Liam. In second place, Damon. In first place, We Love Fitzy, I reckon. Very good. Very good. I shall close that up. What I'm hoping to illustrate to you this afternoon is that by just using some existing assets, we change what could be a very dull, very monotonous lesson where you have no idea whether the students at the other end are listening or engaged into something where you know the students are engaged, you know they're working on what you want them to, you know they're understanding it. And that's what I've tried to demonstrate to you today. And honestly, everything I've shown you today, you could incorporate into your lessons tomorrow with minimal effort. And the last thing I want to do, because again, I'm back into my classroom now. I'm going back to create. I'm going back to I'm going to go to question, but I'm going to go back to my question bank. If you remember, I showed you right at the start, which is a plenary. And my plenary is, how well have you understood today's lesson? Again, I'm asking that question to everybody in my classroom. Hopefully, all of my colleagues now have got that, and hopefully in a couple of seconds, they're going to give me that AFL sort of feedback so I know for next time how I did. No one's handed it in yet. I'm hoping it will soon. I'm giving them another 20 seconds, otherwise I'm assuming they've all left me. Let me just refresh my page and see if it's just lagging behind a bit. There we go. If I click onto view question now, I can say 4 have handed it in. And if you look now, I can see on the question how many people have said each one. And if I click onto their name, it tells me exactly who those students are. So if I now just go back to my main presentation today. So what we've looked at today is Nearpod. We've looked at Edpuzzle, which is, as you remember, is the video with the questions. Kahoot, which you've just done, which is just really fun, really engaging. We've talked about adding questions in Google Classroom, specifically from a question bank that you set up as a department. We very quickly looked at Jamboards. We talked about when you post an assignment in Google Classroom, rather than it just being to an individual, why not get them to work in small groups? It's just such a more fun way and engaging way for them to work, so they don't feel that they're on their own and they're in isolation. We looked at the new collaboration functionality within Meet, and there's just a note there to remind you that that is for enterprise customers only. We're going to share this presentation with you, and if you click on each of these points, it will take you to just to that piece of software or to some help on how to do that. So I've tried to do that for you. So what we're going to do now is going to hand back to my colleague with any questions, and please ask away. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, David.
And I'll hand back to Sarah.
A very interactive session. Glad to see all the different tool applications being shared there and everyone getting stuck in. So can I just do a quick reminder?